The winter sun hung low over the whitewashed mountains, cold but painfully bright, when Ryden Cole, once feared as the Hells Angel of Ridge County, trudged through the icy valley alone. Every crunch of snow under his boots echoed like a reminder of everything he had lost: his club, his brothers, his identity, and the life he once believed was unbreakable. Now he was nothing but a scarred man with frost on his beard, a bag of tools on his shoulder, and a heart that no longer remembered how hope felt. He had been abandoned by everyone, even by the man he used to be, and as he walked deeper into the silent wilderness, a thought kept pounding inside him like a warning. Maybe this is the end of the road. But fate was about to show him that sometimes the end is only the beginning. If you believe in second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindora Life to support more powerful stories like this. Ryden had spent years riding highways with fire in his chest and steel in his hands, living fast and burning everything in his path. But after a brutal fallout inside the biker group, with betrayal, blame, and blood, he had walked away before they could push him out. He left the roaring engines behind for the quiet mountains, hoping the silence would numb what the noise had destroyed. Days turned into weeks as he wandered through frozen towns and empty roads, searching for anything that still made sense. And then, on a pale winter morning, he reached the outskirts of an old mining settlement long forgotten by the world. There, buried beneath layers of untouched snow, he found it, a bar frozen in time. The letters on the wooden sign were barely visible: Frosthaven Tavern, windows cracked, door crooked, roof near collapse. Ice clung to the walls like claws holding on to the past. Something about it stopped him in his tracks. He didn't know whether it was the weathered charm, the loneliness radiating from the building, or the strange pull in his chest, but he felt drawn to it, as if the bar was as abandoned as he was, as if it understood him. He pushed open the door and it creaked like a wounded animal. Inside, the air was painfully cold, and dust floated like ghosts in the pale daylight slipping through the broken roof. Tables were overturned, bottles shattered, chairs rotten with age. A once lively bar now stood as a frozen graveyard of forgotten laughter. And yet, strangely, Ryden felt warmth, not in his skin but in his soul. The place felt familiar, like a home he had never lived in. He sat on the counter, his breath fogging the air. Maybe, he thought, this is where I stop running. The next morning he returned with wood, tools, and the stubborn determination he had once used to survive gang wars. He tore off the rotten panels, hammered nails with frozen fingers, and patched the roof while icy winds ripped at him. Each strike, each swing, each fix reminded him that broken things could be rebuilt, if someone cared enough to try. Days passed, and Ryden worked from dawn to dusk, slowly turning the ruined tavern into something alive again. But he wasn't alone for long. While he was hauling lumber one afternoon, someone approached the property, a woman with dark brown hair in a messy winter braid, a thick forest green coat, and eyes sharp with suspicion. Her name was Maribel Strand, a local wildlife biologist who had lived in the valley her entire life. She had seen the abandoned bar for years, but never imagined anyone would try to resurrect it. She asked Ryden what he was doing, and he explained in his rough, low voice that he was rebuilding the place. No plans, no permits, no dream, just a need to fix something outside himself so he could fix something inside himself. Maribel didn't trust him at first. He looked like trouble and carried an aura of someone who had seen too many dark roads. But she also sensed something deeper, a quiet desperation, a man fighting to stay alive without admitting it. Over the next few days she brought him supplies, rope, nails, warm food, gloves. Because no one should freeze while trying to start over, she said simply. Ryden didn't know how to thank her properly, so he thanked her by working harder. Word of the restoration spread slowly among the scattered valley residents. A retired carpenter named Ulrich Kane stopped by and offered advice on fixing old beams. A bakery owner named Helena Merritt brought donated chairs from her attic, saying they deserved a second life too. A group of local teenagers came to shovel snow from the yard. Ryden didn't ask for any of it, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel unwanted. Still, the nights were hard. When he lay on the creaky bed in the storage room he had converted into a small living space, memories haunted him. The fights, The betrayal, the brotherhood that had fallen apart, the accusations that had cut deeper than knives, and the one night everything changed, the night his closest friend in the club blamed him for a decision Ryden had never made. He clenched his jaw and whispered into the dark, "I wasn't the villain." The tavern became his therapy. Each repaired window was a confession. Each polished table was a surrender. Each rebuilt wall was a step toward forgiving himself. And as weeks turned into months, daylight slowly melted the bitterness inside him. By early spring, Frosthaven Tavern was transformed. Sunlight spilled through clean windows, illuminating polished wooden floors. The air smelled of fresh pine and warm spices. New stools lined the counter. The cracked sign had been restored with care. Outside, wildflowers bloomed where snow once buried the earth. The bar no longer looked abandoned, it looked reborn. On opening day, Ryden expected maybe 3 people to show up. Instead, half the valley arrived. Helena brought pastries. The teens set up lanterns. Ulrich proudly inspected the beams, and Maribel stood quietly at his side, giving him a nod that said more than any words. The first toast in Frosthaven Tavern echoed like a promise that life still had room for redemption, but life always tests those who rise again. One late morning, while restocking shelves, Ryden heard the familiar growl of motorcycles outside. His chest froze. 3 riders pulled up, members of his old club, men who once called him brother, men who now carried bones of old grudges. The leader, Chryson Vale, stepped off his bike with a smirk that chilled the air more than winter ever had. Ryden walked out calmly, but his pulse hammered. Chryson looked him up and down and said the bar looked good. Too good, maybe. Then he reminded Ryden that the past wasn't dead, and debts never stayed buried. Ryden stared at him, refusing to shrink, refusing to break. "I'm not who I was," Ryden said softly. Chryson laughed and said he didn't believe in new lives, but the valley residents did. Maribel and Ulrich stood behind Ryden without hesitation. The teenagers appeared, holding tools that could become weapons if needed. Helena walked out with a rolling pin in hand. Ryden realized in that moment that he wasn't outnumbered anymore. He wasn't alone. Chryson saw the crowd forming and realized something had changed in this frozen corner of the world. Ryden was wanted here, valued, protected. Chryson spat on the ground, glared, and rode away with his men, but not before delivering one final warning. You can't outrun the past forever. As their engines faded down the road, Ryden felt the trembling in his hands, but he also felt something else. Strength. Not the violent, destructive strength he grew up with, but strength born from connection, community, and rebuilding. Days passed, peace returned, but Ryden couldn't shake Chryson's words. One evening, after closing the tavern, he stood outside watching the golden daylight slip across the mountains. Maribel joined him, leaning lightly against his arm. She told him something he had never considered. Maybe you don't need to outrun the past. Maybe you just need to live a future strong enough to outshine it. Those words settled into his heart like sunlight melting old frost.